This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today on the Great North Wrestling Podcast, I have Anthony Garrett, who is a 4-2-1 MMA fighter, best known for his recent fight against Jack Swagger, former WWE Champion, also known as Jake Hager in Bellator. How are you doing today? How are your balls after that beating they took?
They're doing a lot better. I actually saw my doctor last week, and I'm going to be cleared here pretty soon. So I'll be good to go to start training again and starting to get ready for my next fight. If it's against Jake Hager, that's awesome. If it's not, I don't really care anymore. I just want to fight again here pretty soon.
And before I get into a bit of your background, I just want to make one thing clear about that Jake Hager fight, because I keep reading in reports that you said you didn't want to continue after the third nut shot. But what you told me in our last audio interview was the doctor said you can't continue, right?
Yeah, the doctor stopped the fight completely. Yeah. I mean, you can even go back. I mean, if there's a way to ask the doctor, if there's a way to contact him, I mean, he would tell you flat out that the doctor stopped the fight. Even the ref said that. It was a doctor stoppage. So.
All right. We're going to get more into that fight in a bit, but for people that aren't familiar with you, do you want to talk a bit about your martial arts background and how you got into MMA?
Yeah, so I've been doing martial arts my whole life with my dad. We've been doing karate, tai chi, kobo jiu-jitsu, lima lama, and a few other forms of martial arts since I was a little kid. And then I actually played college football at East Carolina University. And when I got home from college, that's when I found Brazilian jiu-jitsu and started training that. And then at the gym I was at, there was a few MMA fighters, and I started sparring and really liked it. And I took my first fight on a week's notice at a place called Bartender's Brawl here in Kansas City. They actually closed off the street where I worked at Martini Corner. I was a bouncer back then, and took the fight on a week's notice and knocked the guy out in 40 seconds, and fell in love with it ever since then, and been training ever since then too.
And that was an amateur fight, I guess, right? Because you did fight amateur.
Yeah, it was an amateur fight. Yeah. 40-second knockout, Bartender's Brawl. I forget what year it was, 2013, I think. Yeah.
Who are some of the coaches that you've been training with since? I know you mentioned before your dad's one of your main coaches, but anyone that fans out there would recognize?
Steve Crawford and Brad Jones. Steve Crawford's my head coach, and then Brad Jones helps out when he can. He's a big time family man, so he's pretty busy a lot of the time, but he comes in and helps out a lot. And he's actually Bobby Volker's head coach. Bobby Volker's been in Strikeforce and the UFC, and he's with Bellator now. So Bobby Volker's probably a name that most people would recognize that I've trained with and sparred with and stuff like that.
And when you went pro, what are some of the other companies that you fought for other than Bellator, and what are some of the highlights of your pro career prior to Swagger?
So before Swagger, all I've ever fought for was Shamrock FC. It's a company owned by Jesse Finney out of St. Louis, and it's a big time Midwestern promotion. They don't really venture outside of the Midwest, but they kill it here in the Midwest. They do a really good job, big time show, and I've had all of my fights with them. Might be looking to have one more fight with them before I fight for Bellator again, because I'm trying to win their heavyweight title. When I went pro for them, I actually knocked out Justin Grant, who's one of their heavyweights. And ever since then, I was hungry for their heavyweight title, because the same night that I fought, Bobby Bentz, who fought for Bellator too at one point, won their heavyweight title for Shamrock FC. And I was just like in all of it. I was like, I want that belt so bad. So I might try to fight for them one more time before I fight for Bellator. Haven't really fully decided yet, because if I do fight for them, it'll be December 7th, and I don't know if I'll be able to get a full fight camp in, since my doctor still hasn't cleared me from the injury that I received from the third groin shot.
So is jiu-jitsu your specialty? You said you started off in jiu-jitsu. Would you say ground is your specialty?
Yeah, I would say jiu-jitsu and ground and pound is my specialty. I won a lot of amateur fights by submissions or TKO on the ground. I actually never, besides my first amateur fight, I never won an amateur fight that wasn't on the ground. So out of the 10 amateur fights that I had, all but one win was on the ground, either submission or TKOs. Only that first one was a standing knockout, and it was just really just a lucky left hook that caught the guy on the chin and dropped him.
Now, if someone was to look up one of your fights on YouTube that you would suggest that they watch, if they were only going to look up one fight of yours, what would you suggest that they watch?
I think my most exciting fight so far has been either me versus Bo Coons or me versus Cesar Guerrertes. The Cesar fight was just a brawl. I mean, we went at each other, squared up in the middle of the cage, and just started throwing fists the whole fight. And he rocked me, so I had to take him to the ground. And I beat him up there for a little bit, and then I actually knocked him out 7 seconds into the second round. And it was crazy because we were both like ridiculously exhausted from the fight, just from taking and giving so much punishment. And then another fight too, I ended up losing it by doctor stoppage from the cut above my left eye, or not doctor stoppage, excuse me. I actually couldn't continue because of the cut above the eye. I was bleeding into my eye and stuff like that against Jordan Mitchell. And that fight really shows that I will try to fight through injuries, because he splits me open the first minute of the fight, and we fight all the way into the second, or at the end of the second round is when the fight gets stopped. It's a really bloody fight, but it's actually really entertaining and fun to watch.
And you did knock out one of Jack Swagger's previous opponents too, right? In another fight.
Yeah. It was my last amateur fight. When I knocked JW out, I think it was 1 minute 18 seconds. It was on the ground.
So you beat him faster than Swagger.
Oh yeah, way faster than Swagger. Yeah. And JW is a great guy. He's had over 50 fights total, amateur boxing, MMA, and pro now. He's a pro now too. He's had over 50 fights, so he's not the most intimidating guy in the world, but he's a gamer. Like, he's really in it to fight and really like give it his all. So the fact that Swagger and I have both beaten him, I know people give him shit for the way he looks, but he's a really tough guy. He'll brawl with the best of them and hang with the best of them, even though sometimes he just doesn't come out on top. He has had over 50 fights into his resume. So when I beat him and turned pro, it was a good thing to do and finally go pro at that point.
So who approached you about this Jack Swagger fight? Is this something that your camp reached out to Bellator, or did they find you?
So the crazy thing is, most people don't know this, and I don't really know if I'm supposed to reveal it or not, but I don't really care. I was one of the few people asked to be his first opponent. Bellator had actually contacted me about being his first opponent, and JW Kaiser got it over me. And they had asked a few other people. I just don't remember their names right now. But I was one of the options of his first fight. So ever since that was brought to my attention, and I found out that he was making a run at MMA, I had told Bellator, I was like, hey, man, down the road, keep me in mind. I'll be his second, third, fourth, fifth opponent, whatever I got to do. It'd be awesome to fight him, make a name for yourself, basically. He's a big name in the WWE world and wrestling world, so you could make a name off of him if you beat him. So, that's what I was looking to do the whole time. Just patiently waiting for my chance against him.
Now, are you surprised that I saw the rating of that Bellator show where he fought you, and I think there was Frank Mir was on the card, right, against Roy Nelson?
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently it had 265,000 people watching. Do you think that they could have done a better job promoting it with such big names on the card?
Yeah, I really thought going into it, they were, and they may knock me for saying this, but I feel like they were promoting the next night more. The Rory McDonald fight, they were promoting that fight and that fight card way more than my fight card, which was kind of frustrating because there were some big names on my fight card. I mean, Phil Davis fought the co-main event. He's a big time dude. He's a big name fighter, and he's really good too. He's very talented. So I think they could have done a much better job at promoting that fight and getting everyone's name out there and just selling that night more, because that, I mean, even though my fight went down the way it did, that night was still really cool to be a part of and be there and watch all the other fights.
And actually, it had bigger names too. I think more people know Swagger and Frank Mir overall in the mainstream media
Oh yeah,
than Rory.
yeah, and
But
Big Country. Big Country's a big name too. I mean, he's been famous for a long time just because of his looks. I mean,
yeah,
he's that overweight heavyweight, but can still bang and survive the whole fight, and wins quite often. So he's a big name too. So I agree with you. Yeah, they could have promoted that fight a lot better.
did either Mir or Nelson talk to you at all that night?
I did not speak to them after the fight, but I spoke to them at weigh-ins and before the fight. They both just gave me advice on the big stage, like how to handle it and stuff like that. And to my credit, I think I handled the big stage very well. I mean, I was very calm and composed, and was good to go. Until that nut shot that the ref first called, that one, when I was offered the 5 minutes, that one took a lot out of me. And then we all know what happened with the third one. So, I think I handled it pretty well and was calm and composed.
You want to just go through the fight for people that didn't hear our audio interview, just your version of what happened in the fight? Because, of course, as I said at the start of this, the story that it seems like they're trying to put out is that you waived the 5 minute wait, and they're kind of just trying to throw this fight away. It doesn't seem like they want Swagger to have a rematch against you. So I'm curious to hear your version of everything.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is after the third groin shot, the doctor, or not the doctor, the referee called the doctor in, and I told the ref to wait. Like, I'm on the ground in pain, and I yell, "Wait a minute, wait a minute." And the next thing I know, two doctors come in. It's not just one doctor, it's two doctors. And they're talking to me. They're telling me that they want to stop the fight. And I'm asking them, wait, wait, wait. What, I need time to recover. I need 5 minutes. And the doctor doesn't even give me my 5 minutes. He just says, I'm stopping this fight because of how bad this is and how bad it could get. That was his exact words. How bad this injury is and how bad it could get. And they were worried about a ruptured testicle. That's what there's film of that. The Instagram film that Bellator sent out, it's the doctor backstage talking to me about the risk of the ruptured testicle, and that's what they were worried about the whole time. That's why they stopped the fight, because of two direct groin shots is what they were concerned about. So I never got the 5 minute option. I would have not, denied it. I would have taken the 5 minutes and then figured out what could have happened after that. I was never offered the 5 minutes, and I don't care what anyone says. You can go back and watch the film. You can go back and watch the film that Bellator's released. The doctors were concerned about the injury, and like everyone has told me, it's not my fault. It's the doctors trying to protect a fighter from himself is what the situation was. Because in their minds, it was stupid to continue. Not in my mind. I wanted to continue. I wanted to go on. And did they do a good job of stopping the fight? Yes. I'm not knocking on them at all. I was injured. I still am injured. And it sucks. It was a bad situation. It was a bad move on Jack Swagger's part to throw such a low knee. And it's very frustrating still. It agitates me. It's on my nerves that Bellator and Swagger are being chickens and not allowing this fight to happen. I mean, I've called Swagger out tons of times on social media, on other interviews. I mean, I'd love to fight him in Hawaii or Japan, like I've said in other interviews. I think if me and him fought in Japan with Benson Henderson and Fedor and Rampage on the card, that would be a huge opportunity for both of us. Not just a fun time in Japan. It'd be a crazy fight and a crazy fight card. So the way I see it is Bellator should just make the fight happen, because they've given rematches to other fighters. Like Matt Mitrione and that Russian dude got a rematch after the kick to the groin, and that was the first 15 seconds of the fight. Injuries like that happen. You get hit to the groin, you're going to go down and you're going to be hurt. I mean, any man knows that. So I don't know what all the hoopla and fuss is about. I mean, you get hit in the groin, you're going down whether you want to or not, especially 2 times in 30 seconds. I mean, that was painful to watch, even in the replays.
And he didn't do that in any of his other fights, so it's unusual that he did that to you twice that the ref actually saw, and then possibly a third time.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre.
Yeah, it's like I said in the last interview, we gave each other our best in the first minute, and then he started wanting to clinch after that. And he attempted a takedown, and so did I. We both stopped takedowns on both of our sides. When he was trying for a takedown, I had my hand on his throat and was pressing him up to where he couldn't drop down for my legs. And I think that really frustrated him. And he felt how strong I was, and he knew in his mind, I'm not going to take this guy down like I did to JW and TJ Jones. This is going to be more of a brawl, more of a fight that I'm not prepared for. And I'm going to say it like I've said in others. He wanted out of the fight. He can say I wanted out of the fight all he wants. That's bullshit. He wanted out of the fight. He was the one that had more to lose. He was the one that had his AEW show the next Wednesday. He couldn't be bloodied. He couldn't be beaten up. He couldn't be injured for that night. You know, I don't know how much he's making, but I bet he's making more money with AEW than he is with Bellator.
Oh, yes. They're paying very large amounts. It's definitely in the 6 figures, and he's only wrestling like 4 or 5 times a month for AEW. So it's a pretty sweet deal.
That is a sweet deal, actually. Lucky for him, yeah.
If he fights again, you would make the most sense, because if he fights another unknown, I mean, there won't be any build up to it, and it's going to be hard to convince a star to fight him after that last performance. So I hope that they will consider it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for too. I mean, I did a interview with ESPN 101 the other day, and they asked me what was my perfect scenario, and that is my perfect scenario, is to fight him again, whether it be in December or January. I mean, let's just get in there and figure it out. I mean, if he wins that night, great for him. If I win that night, great for me. I mean, what matters to me the most is that I just want the rematch, and he should too. It makes sense. It just makes all the sense in the world for the rematch to happen.
Well, maybe not on his part, because he has a lot to lose. He has the tough guy image. He has the AEW contract. And then if you beat him in the second fight, that goes with what you've been saying about the first fight. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. But as I said, it seems like they're just trying to sweep this fight under the rug from Jack Swagger's side of it.
Yeah, they are. I mean, for sure. I mean, what you said makes sense. I mean, if I do beat him in the second match, everything he said, everything he's done kind of goes away. So, I mean, I'm going to do my part, and I hope my fans do their part, and I hope Bellator does their part and tries to make the fight happen. I mean, I've heard good things from Bellator, that I am going to fight for them again. It may not be against him, but I am going to fight for them again. Everyone had praises for me. Everyone talked good about me. It's just unfortunate that what happened. Obviously, that's what they always say. So if I don't fight him again, that's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be annoying. It's going to suck. But, I mean, let him fight a big name. Let him get his ass kicked. And then I'll fight him after that even. I don't care. You know, he posted a picture of himself on Instagram and said that somebody caught his eye. And his fans were referring to Frank Mir or Roy Nelson. And to be honest, either one of those two would kick his ass. I mean, Frank Mir and Roy Nelson would whoop his ass, especially on stand-up. And they're both very good on the ground. I don't think he can handle one of them yet. You know? Yeah. And like I've said in an interview before, I'm not even ready for Frank Mir or Roy Nelson. Not yet. But one day in my career and one day in his career, we'll both be ready for big names like that. And that's why we need to fight. We do need to rematch, you know, run it back and figure out who's the better man so that we can move on with our careers.
So where can people follow you if they want to follow your career on social media?
Yeah, so my Instagram name is Anthony the Lionheart Garrett, and then you can just add me or follow me on Facebook under Anthony Garrett. I don't really use Twitter. I have a Twitter, but I don't really use it. I'm going to start trying to use it a little bit more, so you can follow me on there as well. But basically, I use Instagram and Facebook. So Anthony the Lionheart Garrett on Instagram, and then Anthony Garrett on Facebook.
Now, what would your dream fight be? Of course, other than Swagger, like, is there a big name heavyweight that you'd ideally want to fight?
Oh yeah, Fedor. I would love anything to fight Fedor Emelianenko. I mean, that would be anyone's dream fight, to fight the legendary Fedor Emelianenko. I mean, he's a legend for a reason. He's a beast. You know what I mean?
Well, I appreciate you taking the time talking to us, and I personally hope you do get the rematch because I think you got the short end of the stick there, and I do think he's going to try and hide from you. That's my personal opinion. Although I do respect him, I just think there's too much risk for him to have that fight again.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm just hoping and praying too for the fight to happen, because we all want to see it. You know, I mean, even a lot of his fans want to see the rematch. That's the crazy part. I've looked on his Instagram and everything, and his own fans are calling him out on his bullshit. So hopefully that opens his eyes a little bit. Hopefully this interview opens his eyes a little bit. I mean, and I super appreciate you taking the time out and interviewing me again. You know, so I appreciate everything you've done, and I hope it reaches him, and I hope he goes. Yeah, I don't like that guy. I want to fight him again. I want to put my hands on him. I want to figure this out. You know.